All right, let's get started. So my name is Yev Meyer, and I will be talking to you about speeding up LLM development with Gretel. So let's start with why we're here. A lot has been said about teams being GPU poor, and while that is still the case to some extent, things in general have improved quite a bit. People are able to get the hardware they need. However, even with access to that hardware, there's still a giant challenge that everyone is forgetting, and that is that most AI teams actually data poor, right? They're not just GPU poor, they're data poor. We've collectively have known about this for a long time. Most teams know that if you have garbage in your data, garbage in, garbage out. And what teams have done is adopted a can-do attitude with all of this, right? So to paraphrase Oscar the Grouch, just because you're trash doesn't mean you can't do great things. It is called a garbage can, not garbage cannot. And so you end up, in the best case, with a scenario of team having to deal with really messy data. What does that team do? Well, they spend 80% of their time wrangling data. That is the best case. In worst case, there is no data at all, and there are several flavors of this. It could be because your team doesn't have access to data. Could be that you're dealing with sensitive data. The team has to jump through many different hoops to get access. It also could be that the team is working on a new capability and they simply don't have the data. The data does not exist. There is no telemetry. They're not able to even prototype. And so what teams end up doing is spending quite a bit of time and resources labeling data. They also look into public data, and often public data has pretty questionable licenses. And the result of all of this is that there are literally weeks and months wasted on development effort, and quite often AI projects join an ever-growing graveyard of AI projects. The teams are just not able to deliver and put systems into production. What's also interesting is that generative AI put a very new spotlight on all of this, specifically spotlight on data quality. What we see consistently is that teams are able to get much better performance if they can get access to high quality data. They also need substantially less of that data to accomplish anything that they're trying to do. And increasingly, we see synthetic data as being a big component of this, a big pillar. And so we're observing massive model performance gains. And these performance gains are really reaffirming the data-centric approach AI. And the whole idea behind data-centric approach to AI is that it's a systematic discipline for engineering data for your specific use cases. If you attended some of the sessions yesterday, the team behind DBRX spoke about this. They were discussing being in the trenches, developing DBRX. And what they've seen is that with a better data set, you do get a better model with half as much data. And this is the real power of data. When you look at teams behind Phi 3 and Phi 2 series of models, and you look at the technical reports, they openly state that the innovation lies entirely in the data set used for training. And in the case of Phi and Phi 3, the team has put together synthetic data sets that were specifically created to teach the model common sense reasoning and general knowledge. When you look at the team behind Aya, they used synthetic data in combination with translation to achieve state-of-the-art results on many different languages. And when you look at Gemini and the technical report openly states that besides traditional sources, which include vendor-curated data and third-party licensed sources, they use synthetic approaches as well. So while synthetic data is most certainly disrupting AI and ML as a whole, it has yet to disrupt the enterprise. Why is that? Well, the enterprise brings a lot of new challenges. You have companies getting really excited about doing something in AI and generative AI space in general. They start building, and they very quickly realize that they're dealing with really poor data quality, right? This is one of the reasons why generative AI really put a new spotlight on the type of data people have in their companies. And so what are some of the challenges? Well, in general, if you work in the enterprise, you have a lot of data. With more data, you typically have more quality problems. You also quite often deal with sensitive and, for good reasons, siloed data. But siloed data is a double-edged sword because many teams are just not able to access. Innovation within companies is literally being stymied because people cannot get access to the data that they need. There are also important security considerations, especially if you're working in a heavily regulated industry. Think healthcare, think finance. It's very hard to get access to data. There are also important questions around licensing. The reality is that ownership of synthetic data or any type of data is really important. And people, to this day, sometimes forget that many LLMs can actually be used to train other models, especially if such models are competitive. If you're developing, and competitive here is in quotes because it's up to the LLM provider to decide what is competitive or not. So if you're using OpenAI and you're using data generated by OpenAI, chances are you actually can't use that data to train an LLM of your own. And this is where Gretel comes in. Gretel is the synthetic data platform. And what we basically allow you to do is generate better data so you can get to better models. You can generate artificial synthetic data sets with the same characteristics as real data so that you can improve your models. And these don't have to be generative AI models, other models as well. This is our company at a glance. We have a vibrant community of over 150,000 users who have collectively generated more than 350 billion records to date. These are some of our customers, including Databricks, including a lot of companies in the finance sector, in healthcare. And what I'm really trying to highlight here is just the diversity of verticals in industries, because it doesn't matter what industry you're operating in, you're always dealing with data challenges. I guarantee that your teams are data poor. Gretel is a multimodal synthetic platform. So at the root of it is a huge focus on privacy. We have differentially private solutions available to teams to generate synthetic data sets that have the same utility as the real world data they're dealing with. Because if you're training that classifier, you're working with another model, you actually don't need access to raw data a lot of the time. What you do need access to is data that has the same utility, has the same statistical properties as the real world data. We also provide ways to easily transform that data, to incorporate privacy filters that are important to you, and really important, a way to evaluate all of this. So very big focus on evaluation and privacy reporting. The platform itself is multimodal. You're able to generate tabular data, text data, image data, time series data, highly dimensional data. And backing all of this are many different models that are purpose-built for synthetic data generation. Gretel solutions are available via an SDK and CLI. You can access Gretel in the cloud. If you're working in a heavily regulated industry, you can also deploy Gretel in your own environment. You can bring your own cloud. And that really lets companies who are thinking deeply about privacy get the data that their teams need in order to be able to build AI and ML solutions. We also give you access to workflows and connectors so you can easily tap into the data you have. Some of the connectors I'm highlighting here, data sources, are tabular, time series, image, free text. You're able to get this data in and out of your favorite data warehouse, be it Databricks or another platform. You're able to access cloud storage, relational databases, and ML tools as well. And really what all of this gives, the advantage that it gives, is that your team is able to generate high quality data. That data is actually engineered and iterated on to be tailored to your specific use case. So that if your team realizes that there is a data gap, there is some sort of class imbalance, they can actually design a data set to bridge that gap. We also give you ownership of that data, and all of these things allow your team to innovate faster and ultimately lower the cost of development. Very high level, some of the use cases that I mentioned, you are able to bridge data gaps, you are able to break down silos. If you're working with differentially private data, that means you can safely share that data as well among stakeholders, among partners. You're able to address biases and imbalances in your data and also improve diversity and volume. Again, some of the industries we're working with include finance, healthcare, public sector, advertising, and media. And at the core of all of this is something we call Gretel Navigator. So if you attended the keynote session, they actually did a lot of the work for me. Compound AI systems were mentioned all over the place. This is really what's at the core of Gretel as well. Gretel Navigator is a compound AI system designed to generate high-quality data using natural language. And what that allows folks to do is simply describe the kind of data they want. And this is a screenshot where someone is requesting to generate a product data set, a CPG data set, and we're able to do that from scratch. Now, what does it mean to have a compound AI system? It means that we have things like agentic workflow built into this. We have task planning, we have AI feedback, purpose-built data models, including custom LLMs. We have best-of-breed data tools, and importantly, we have best data generation practices built into this as well. Okay, so Gretel Navigator is currently in public preview. We invite you to explore it, take it for a spin. But really, it's not about having any single model. It's about all the tools that work in tandem to deliver the highest quality data possible, and do so for your specific use case. So I'll discuss a few scenarios of Gretel in action. The first one up is Gretel and Databricks. So we're working closely with the team at Databricks. We were able to help the team, the Mosaic team, design and iterate on large, high-quality targeted data sets. I love this quote from Jonathan Frankel, chief scientist at Databricks, saying that thanks to Gretel, dataset creation can now keep up with our scientists and our compute. As of this week, Gretel is also an ISV technology partner. What does that mean? It means if you're a Databricks user, you can easily access Gretel's high-quality synthetic data through a workflow connector. And so it's very easy to do as you go about building your ML solutions. The second use case is around open source. So something that we have done a few months ago is we released the world's largest synthetic open source text-to-SQL dataset. Now, for some context, what is a text-to-SQL dataset? It's a dataset that allows you to go from a natural language to a SQL query. As I'm sure many of you know, most of the data in enterprises lives in databases. What does that mean? Users need to be able to speak to these databases, to fetch data, to extract it, to analyze it. In order to do that, you have to know how to write SQL, and you have to know how to do that well. And so it would be amazing if we can develop solutions and models that are able to go from a question or an instruction that a user has to a SQL query that accomplishes the task. So we published this data set on Hugging Face. It very quickly became the #1 trending data set on Hugging Face. We got a shout out from the CEO of Hugging Face calling our work beautiful. And really, this was a watershed moment in the world of synthetic data. Not only was this a huge milestone, it was also an invitation to the broader AI community to really engage with this data set, to build on top of it, and to contribute back to open source. So this is just the beginning for us. There'll be more things coming on the horizon. And the last time we checked, this data set actually wasn't downloaded 10,000 times. It's already 11,000 times since its publication just 2 months ago. This is some of the context I shared. Just to make it explicit, what you want to be able to do is enable users to interact with databases. So imagine just being able to ask the question instead of writing, in this case, a very simple query, right? Like some of the queries can get really complex. This is just a preview of what this looks like. You will see that this data set is very rich. There are things like different domains or verticals. There are different levels of SQL complexity and different SQL ask types, because you can be using SQL to accomplish many different tasks. You could be using SQL to create tables, views. You could be using SQL to fetch data, to analyze that data. And so there are a lot of fields, all of them synthetically generated in this data set. There are over 100,000 records, 23 million total tokens, 12 of them focusing on SQL specifically. We have coverage across 100 distinct domains. As I mentioned, a gamut of SQL tasks, a wide range of complexity levels. We also include database context, because what's important to this task is not just generate SQL that's plausible, but SQL that is actually grounded in the database context. And SQL that is actually working. It's parsable, it's validated. And we also include a natural language explanation of what the SQL query is doing. And so when you think about this, what would go into generating something like this, just to give you an idea, there are a lot of things at play. You have to be able to figure out what is the best tool for the job. Is there potentially more than one tool to do said job? When it comes to diversity of data, how do you go about generating that? As I mentioned, SQL can't just look plausible or any type of code. It actually needs to work. And then some things that we're probably all aware of, right? Basic data hygiene. But that can get actually incredibly complex depending on the use case you're working with. And you probably want to do evaluation, right? So this just gives you a sense of what's involved in the compound AI system approach to this in order to be able to generate truly high quality data. And so it's this and so much more. And this is really the vision behind the compound AI system that we are building. When we look at the quality of this data set, we've compared to some of the other text-to-SQL data sets that have been used to train models. And what we consistently see using effectively independent third-party evaluations, in this case, this is using LLM as a judge, we consistently see much better compliance with SQL standards, better SQL correctness, and better adherence to instructions. Also use public benchmarks such as BERT2SQL to train models on this data set and evaluate on the score. And what we show here is the lift in score that you get. And we looked at across many different models, Llama 3, Phi 3, Mistral. Take a favorite model, and you immediately see the impact of fine training with this data set. The third use case that I'd like to talk to you about is Gretel using Gretel itself to get really incredible results. So we're actually a power user of Gretel itself. And being a power user of your own products is one of the best ways to actually build a company too. What that allows us to do is innovate really fast. It allows us to build better products. In practice, unlocked much faster innovation via synthetic data, right? So we're generating synthetic data to build our own solutions. We achieved an incredible increase in experimental throughput, increase in verticals and use case coverage compared to anything you can possibly access in public data. And importantly, you're able to design data for your specific gaps. That's really the point I'd like to emphasize, because your teams are struggling with very specific things. What they would love to be able to do is design data for the specific use case, for the specific data gap that they have. And all of this results in really ideas being the bottleneck, not data anymore. Obviously, all this with higher quality. And so an example use case is a custom instruct LLM that we designed for tabular data. It's part of Gretel Navigator, our compound AI system. It allows you to create, edit, augment tabular data. And we're getting state-of-the-art results. So more on this coming soon. So we started with why are we here? We're here because most teams are data poor. And I'd like to wrap up with where are we headed? And really where we're headed is the future where data is at least in part, if not fully, synthetic. The WizardLM team put this very concisely. As natural world's human-generated data becomes increasingly exhausted through LLM training, we believe that data carefully created by AI will be the sole path towards more powerful AI. There are obviously a lot of challenges to be solved here, right? I'm not discounting any of those. But synthetic data is here to stay, and it's definitely part of the future. So if it's not on your radar, you should absolutely be looking into it. To emphasize this further, this is a chart that Gartner put out recently showing that by 2030, synthetic data will completely overtake real world data. And we're helping companies get to that place. So here are some of the resources. Please do come chat with us at booth E1. You can access Gretel Navigator. You can also look at our CLI and SDK. We have many different use cases on our blog, webinars and events. There are blueprints you can get started with. We also recently published a definitive guide for the enterprise. And last but not least, step into the future. Scan the QR code, use it to generate and share your first synthetic data set. Once you do it, you'll be entered for a chance to win one of the prizes, right? So not only can you step into the future, you can also get a gift card out of this. Try to complete this before June 26th, and we'll be announcing winners on June 28th. And that's it. Thank you very much.